Hi, it's Bethany. I'm a lower elementary Montessori teacher, and I gave a live talk on July 27th, 2024, all about my scope and sequence and how I see the scope and sequence of lower elementary Montessori. Here is a video from the recording.
For this part, we are going to be talking about the math scope and sequence of it all. You will see I very much enjoy the language concepts that we'll be talking about next, but I do love the math, but I do love the language. All of the Montessori stuff is so, I don't know, I just get so passionate talking about it. So I will talk about the four different groups of math and how I see the groupings of the math. So I see it as one, numeration, time, money, measurement, geometry, and then word problems, graphs, and extra concepts. So how I started doing that is, again, all the maps have the different sections, but you could also get the total maps where they go in that order. So the kids have a balanced plate of what they're learning. So they're not just all doing numeration all the time or just not doing geometry all the time. But how I used to do it is I used to have like a weekly schedule and say, okay, numeration was on Monday. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that either. Then the kids know, like, hey, let's either pick a numeration work, or I would pick like what I was showing them. But I like the way of having them choose like we're supposed to in Montessori, whereas not telling them what to do, but to just pick what they want to do, which at first it takes a little while to let go of the control, but also it keeps them organized in the sequence of the maps. And again, I have students asking me again for my presentation, so that's so great. So again, the total math maps, I believe everybody was here the first time, so I don't have to go through them. If you want to do the individual lists, that's great too for the different maps. So also the counting map is for those students that need extra work with counting numbers, like just one to all the way up, right? And I also have on there like the 100 board. I always have on like the first grade map because I want to see them and see where they are, right? To see, can they get to 100? But also on that counting map, I have like the 200 board, the 300 board. And obviously we don't have those little tiles. We could, but I just like them to say, I'm going to write, like 101 to 200, 201 to 300, if they really need that practice. So that's what, if you see on those maps, it goes all the way to 900 board. And that's just to reiterate them counting through after they do like the short beads and do the other works. And that's what I'll say about the counting maps. But now we'll get into the first grade numeration. So for first grade numeration, it's addition and subtraction equations, both static, meaning non-carrying, or dynamic with carrying. And how we teach that in Montessori is using the golden beads, the stamp game, and the small bead frames. Sometimes I show them with the golden beads, the different ways to do it. I know also some people show all the first years, all the different numerations in one, like all the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division throughout the year. They show them all in the golden beads. I tend to just stick to the addition and subtraction, and then when kids get to second and third grade, then they could see the golden beads if they want to see that. Um, and then also the addition and subtraction math facts. And what we use with that are the finger charts and the colored beads. And so they're really just honing in on their addition skills and their subtraction skills in first grade. And so how I have them practice this every day is on my work plan. They have to do the math card and math facts every day. So in my free resource hub, also there's 453 math cards you can just print and use in your classroom. And that's how I do it. They have 3 math equations on them. And so the kids, especially for the first grade at the beginning, I have these other almost like command cards of what they can choose for math. That's still a card where it's not the big equations right away. It's like sequencing numbers and other math concepts like that. So they could practice that first before they get to the solving equations. And then for the addition and subtraction math facts, I have them practice math facts, and they usually use the colored beads for that to count, or they can use the finger charts, things like that. But so I know every day they get these 2 things, at least if they do choose to do them, and most people do because I will tell you, in order to eat snack, they have to do math card and editing, so I know they get a math and language, and then throughout the day, they finish other things, even if it's not all of the things. And then for other, 1st grade numeration, that includes reading numbers with the golden beads and just on their own in general, greater, less than, and equal to, ordinal and cardinal numbers, rounding, and some students, even at the very end of 1st grade, get to that multiplication since it's all hands-on materials. It's not like they're memorizing the facts yet. It's using the beads just to see, hey, what's after addition and subtraction? And this is where these types of things are where they would write their math work for the day, even though they've already done like a math card and math facts, or maybe they came in and chose to do a math work first. That's fine as well. And sometimes, like if I present them the first time, it's a stamp game addition, then that's technically an equation. So they can do an equation like a math card with it so they can count it 2 for 1. The kids like that one. But that's up to you in your classroom if you want to count it as both, especially for the young 1st graders. They like to try to do works together so then they can feel accomplished and getting it done. Now for 2nd grade numeration, after reviewing addition and subtraction equations, I like to do the dot game, and that's the Montessori material where you're adding 3 or more thousand place numbers with the dots. And, that's just a nice 2nd grade work. You'll see throughout the talks that I do like, deem some works 1st grade works or 2nd grade works or 3rd grade works, but if a student comes up to me and asks, "Can I see the presentation?" I will still give it to them. A lot of, kids, I don't know if you're in your classrooms, if this happens, they all wanna see the test tube division. And while that's what I deem that a 3rd grade work, I still can show it to the 1st and 2nd years if they ask, but then, usually they don't want to do the follow-up work for it, and I'm fine with that because then they can just see it when they're older and there's less beads on the floor. But, also for 2nd grade numeration, I have them go through on the maps go through all of the multiplication with the bead layout. So laying out 1 times 1, 2 times or 1 times 2, 1 times 3, and then 2 times 1, 2 times 2, all the way through the tens. So they practice that, and that takes them a few, mm, I would say about like 6 weeks-ish, depending on the student, to get through the whole multiplication sequence like that. And so it's just a big focus in 2nd grade about multiplication and honing in on this addition and subtraction skills throughout the year. But then also they start solving those multiplication equations using the golden beads, the large bead frames, the checkerboard, the golden bead frame, and the banker's game. I put in that order because that is how I typically like to do it. And why I put the large bead frame first is because I have the kids read large numbers on them. So reading large numbers on the bead frame is easier than on the checkerboard, but the kids like the checkerboard for solving multiplication the best, I would say. Um, Sometimes I don't show them the golden beads, but sometimes I do because that's a big work and they, carry it out. So the large bead frame is more interesting to do with the actual multiplication equations like this one up here. But once they can read numbers on this, then I'll usually move them to the checkerboard and then they love reading the numbers with the colored beads on which beads, and those are larger numbers too. And then they learn how to solve the multiplication equations on these. And then sometimes I'll do the golden bead frame, but definitely I'll do the banker's game because it's the age of socialization, right? So the kids want to work together, and that banker's game needs a few people in order to complete it. And then some 2nd graders, but this is more of a 3rd grade, will start multiplying by 2-digit numbers as well. I had some of my 2nd graders last year do that, and it worked out nicely. Okay. Okay, and then, of course, the best 2nd grade work not the best, it's just funny how you feel different ways about different works, is the decanomial layout. This is a great way to practice multiplication, but I just love the transformation, how it goes from squares to cubes, and when you do that initial angular layout, then it gets you to, um, how the beads lay on the bead cabinet or the long chains and short chains. It's the layout, which I thought was so cool, and I didn't realize that until the training. But I was in there as a child, then you just like don't pick it up. So I make a big deal out of it when we do the transformation. And that leads to learning the squares and the cubes of numbers, which then they repeat in third grade as well. Um, and then some students also start division facts in second grade, but you're just following that child and seeing if they're ready for that, if they're picking up on the multiplication, that sort of thing. So some students don't get there, but some do, right? And then third graders, I think, or third levels too, I think it's a big jump for the numeration in third grade. We have to review all of the addition, subtraction, multiplication equations and do the two-digit multiplication. um a lot of the works just seem larger, like on the maps you'll see it's like, oh, that is a larger way. um it seems like a big jump, but the kids, especially since they're with first and second graders, you see them grow so much in the third year that you're like, okay, they are big kids for now until they go up to upper L and then you know um but then the biggest work is the test tube division. So it's just a lot of multiplication and a lot of division as well. And a lot of square works too. That's so much fun. And then they just keep reading larger and larger numbers. Okay, now we'll talk about time, money, measurement. And I kind of just put all these together because we have to teach them and know them. So time, money, and measurement, you'll see on the maps is that so if it's a time, money, measurement, it will change between time, money, and measurement each time. So it's not like a time work every week, a money work, or a measurement. It goes in a sequence. So time is just reading time on the clock, recognizing coins and their values for money or adding money. Measurements is all ruler measurements in centimeters, although depending on what country you're from, correct? And then measurements for cooking and fractions. So let's see, for first graders, there's the clock sequence. So hour, half hour, quarter past, quarter till, AM, PM, digital clocks. I'm always surprised at what they think are like AM activities and what are PM activities. So it's good to give them like a differentiator of that. And then the money sequence, penny, nickel, dime, quarter, the value and the recognition, and then adding small groups of coins. So maybe like a nickel and a penny, or a dime, or two dimes and a penny, something like that. And then measurements sequence, like the inch, half inch, centimeters, and then fractions. Since the Montessori fractions are just like in one whole thing, it could be wholes to fifths and then fifths to sixths is how I like to do it. And then just breaking things up into equal pieces so they see how things become in fractions. So then here's the whole thing I just mentioned for first grade. So the second graders review all that, and also we're going to add the 5-minute clock and the minute clock to theirs, and then making change, adding money, subtracting money. And then for the measurement, a fourth inch, adding fractions because it's just adding with the actual Montessori material. So pushing things together to see that they're adding greater and less than fractions, and then liquid measurements, thermometers, measuring temperature, which I also do thermometers with all the grades when we do like a science experiment, but just for the thermometers, I try to hone in on it in second grade. So I see that they really understand the concept. And then for third grade, so here's again all the second grade and first grade things. So then we're adding on to this because some third years are still need some practice with the different concepts, right? So we're also going to add elapsed time to third years, money word problems, and then all the measurements. I put adding, subtracting, dividing fractions, but we don't always get there. Sometimes they do, but that's also for upper L. And then maybe reducing fractions, probability of fractions on a spinner is a good one because it's like the probability of it, and mixed fractions, just being able to read like a whole 1 3/4 type of thing. And then also I put up here a nice one for activity for making change is having like setting up a little store, and then the kids, one person's the cash register and the other person's the shopper. It's also a practical life activity. And then the kids take the items. I have an actual cash register they use and they just type it in, and then They get the amount for the change and they pay them and try to make the change with the coins or the bills. Okay. And then for geometry, so for first grade, it's the fundamental concepts, which I have a picture down here of an activity I do with it, which is just doing the point with the little stickers, the line with the string, the plane with a sticky note, and then a solid is a cutout of the cube. But I also like to do if you would like to do a food activity and the parents are okay with them eating the red dye, like those pull apart Twizzlers, you could take those and cut them into the points, and then the lines will be just like the lines of the Twizzler piece, and then they could put the four of the lines together to make the plane or this surface. And then for the solid, they cut off a piece, and that's a fun one. I've done more than the string one, but I like to change it up every year because then at least have three different ones because then I let the first, second, and third graders do because if you have a food activity, everybody wants to do it. So then they also start to see the lines. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot for the geometry, but the lines, there's five different types of lines. There's the types of lines, the parts of a straight line, positions of a line segment, the positions of two straight lines, and the positions of a straight line, which is a different one. And so between those, they'll get a presentation of that when they're ready for it and they see it on their map. And then also the next geometry they'll see is a command card for that thing that they learned in geometry last. So it could be like parts of a straight line and then parts of a straight line command card. So they're cementing their work with that. And I used to do it also, I'll mention with geometry, where it's like Geometry Wednesday, and I would present a geometry thing, which again, that's a fine way to do it. Or you can see the maps and how the students follow that because some of them get through it too, and it's just nice. Oh, and then I was going to mention first, I'll go, oops. For the shapes, what I mean by shapes is the geometry cabinet. So that's all the quadrilaterals, the polygons, the curved figures, and then there's the triangles in there where they see more of those in the second grade. And then the circles and rectangles, which are also just great measurements because each one, it's in centimeter measurements, but like for the rectangles, it's the 10 centimeters, but then each one has a different length in the middle, so or width. So it's like 5 centimeters or 6 centimeters, and that's a good way to practice with the geometry and measurement together. And then of course the geometric solids. But for first grade, it's basically the quadrilaterals, polygons, um, and the curved figures. But then second graders see all of those again as a review. Some of them are just like maybe just do the line command card, maybe not the three-part card again. And then for the angles, there's the four different angle or five different angle works as well for that. And then the third graders do all that, more angles in depth. And then I always say that the parts of the circle is a third grade work. And it's like their big ending geometry work. They've worked through all the geometry work their 3 years, or if you have a new student, they work through it and then like get to it by the end of the year. And I do show it like on Pi Day. I'll show the parts of the circle to everyone, but then just the third graders will get like their own special presentation for the parts of the circle. And then they can measure the diameter on the circle drawer from the geometry cabinet. And then, of course, the other areas of study for everyone, but mostly second and third graders, are perimeter area, but everybody can do symmetry. And of course, there's other concepts that you might add in there as well that are also listed on the scope and sequence, right? And then a big reminder that geometry is all around us. So you can't, look one area and not see a shape. Like if you look anywhere, you see points, lines, planes, solids, and just shapes in general. Everywhere you look is a shape. So I make a big deal about that to my students. So then we could also just go outside and like list shapes inside the classroom, list shapes. So they're saying, well, geometry is a study that we need because it's in our everyday life. And now we have the word problems, graphs, and extra concepts. So for the word problems, addition and subtraction, and for the first graders, and then for the second graders, we have addition, subtraction, multiplication, and then you probably guessed it, the third graders, you can just add on division, right? Or you could do money word problems or fraction word problems, elapsed time word problems, a lot of different things with that. And then for graphs, these are interesting in how I break them up for first grade, second grade, and third grade. And before I get to that too, again, there's not too many Montessori materials that are for word problems. You basically have to just either make your own or get them from someplace else. Graph works. I'll show you a cool way to do bar graphs, and then extra concepts I'll show you in a second. So I like to do pictographs and bar graphs with the first graders. Second graders will be pictographs, bar graphs, line graphs, circle graphs, and plotting data. The third graders, those same things, but then also graph paper work that could also work with the area, measuring area, and but also filling in like half of a graph paper too. But then here's the interesting way to do bar graphs. If you have tile floor, it's like a 12 by 12 square, and you just make it big, like each square. And you can say, I think we did last year, like everybody's favorite candy or favorite book. So the kids will go around. I usually show this for first graders, but then the second and third graders want to do it again too. So it's a nice follow-up. And so this might even be maybe like a thing everybody does together. There is some whole group things in this too. I will present it to the first years though like this because it gives them like a hands-on way to learn how to do the bar graph. So just there, it's like the how many people liked it and what kind of like candy bar or book or whatever they want to pick with that. And then extra concepts. So for first grade, it's addition, subtraction, all the finger charts, skip counting, estimating, scales. Fact families is a big one for when you make the little house and do like put the 3 numbers and they add and subtract with those just using those 3 numbers, and it works out like 2 plus 3 equals 5, and then 5 take away 2 is 3. Patterns, tally marks, in and out tables, Roman numerals. The second graders have more of like the math bead work with the commutative property, Pythagoras board, tally marks, arrays, different ones like that. Fact families for addition and division. And then third graders have estimating scales, arrays, and then sometimes they get to decimal works. I know that's also for upper elementary, but they also do it with adding money, so adding decimals together, things like that. But then I'm going to give a big shout out to the missing number addition. So many of my first years loved the missing number addition, where instead of just being like 2 plus 3 equals 5, it's 2 plus blank equals 5, or blank plus 2 equals 5, that type of thing. Oop, yes. So just some different things. And again, just like with the time, money, measurement, these word problems, graphs, and extra concepts are rotated between that. And then when you use the maps, you'll see the sequence of how it goes. So, and again, even if the kids get to like the end of a map here and they want to go back and do something they've already seen, they're welcome to do that as well. It's a great way to review concepts, or if the students just like a work very much, then they will like to go through that.
Thank you for watching. Go ahead and click the link below if you would like to see more information about my scope and sequence and maps, my free hub of Montessori resources, and my Montessori activities, which also has Montessori resources for your classroom. Thank you.